Hello, everybody. Welcome to the League Bound podcast, where we discuss rising NBA draft prospects and the stars of college basketball. I'm your co-host, Branden Blue, and today I'm here with my guys, Cameron King and Jake Schrantz. It's a new draft cycle. College basketball is about to start. The NBA season is about to start. How are y'all feeling about this upcoming season?
No, I'm excited. I feel like this class is one of the best we've had in a pretty long time here. I think there's a really deep class with a lot of great players, so I'm ready to dive into it.
Yeah, Cam, you were saying before we got on that it might not just be a big three. That's something that, earlier on in this draft process, people thought there were those three main guys and then some of the other top talent as well. But we'll see as the season gets started if some of these maybe fourth, fifth, and sixth prospects in the preseason start to climb up there and compete for that top three spot. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and I think with this draft class, there's talent all around, obviously, as there's every year, but the kind of selling point has been the top three guys. AJ DeBonsa, Darren Peterson, Cameron Boozer. I mean, I think we've talked about them before. I'm sure we have on this pod, but they are all high level guys who I all could make a strong case to go number one this year. But I think the fun part about them is, like, if you ask different people what they think and who they would tier number one, who they would tier number two, I think there can be some really interesting discussion. And so at the end of this, after we kind of talk about them, I do kind of want to have each of us rank them. But I guess who wants to start off? Because I think with this group, there's so much to like, and I feel like for any team that falls in or gets a top three pick this year, you're taking a major W.
So yeah, I feel like with these three prospects, kind of like you said, Brandon, if you're inside the top three, you're really, at this point, from what we've seen, you're not going to go wrong. You've got three elite prospects that would be at the top of pretty much any draft class as of late. It's going to kind of depend on what teams are looking for. If you're looking for a lead guard that can be a complete game changer, an offensive juggernaut, you're looking at Darren Peterson. If you're a team that maybe has a guard that you're building with and you're trying to develop on the wing, you've got AJ DeBonsa, who can do it all offensively, off the dribble, hang dribble, pull-ups, all that kind of stuff. But I feel like the guy that almost gets overlooked in a little bit between those two is Cam Boozer. He's going to be in that front court at Duke, a team that routinely produces quality forwards and bigs. You have to go back only just 1 year to look at Cooper Flagg, the way he was so efficient and so effective at so many different aspects of the game. And I feel like not in the same way that Cooper did it, but we're going to see Cam Boozer produce in all sorts of different aspects, getting blocks, moving his feet defensively, getting rebounds, obviously filling it up and scoring. So Cam Boozer, I think, kind of flies under the radar, if that makes any sense, at 3. But I wouldn't be shocked if by the end of this regular season, we're looking at Cam Boozer as maybe having the more effective performances over those other two.
Yeah, I definitely think Cam is definitely someone who gets the least amount of love out of the three, just because the other two are just they're kind of like their games are kind of like aesthetic, like they're what kids gravitate towards, what people like to see in basketball. Like they're otherworldly talents, and while Cam is like a really good player in his own right, people kind of tend to get a little bit tired of success. Like he's like that dependable old car that never breaks down. Like anything he's ever played and he's won, he's always been one of the best players in his class. And while I don't know if there's a path to him to get to number one, he's definitely in the running.
Yeah, I agree. I think Jake kind of said it best. Like, he does everything. He's versatile, extremely efficient. I think the one thing, though, that does kind of separate him and stop him from maybe getting to that number one spot is just, I don't think he has the same creation floor or ceiling as maybe Peterson and DeBonsa do. And I think right now that's just why Cameron talked about the aesthetics of it, but I think it's just their overall on-ball advantage creation that is kind of why everybody is looking at those guys as 1A and 2A.
Yeah, I think they're not the same type of player, but if you think about some pretty elite bigs already in the NBA, if you compare like Giannis to Jaren Jackson, it's just a different offensive scheme with those players. Giannis, they're calling sets where he's operating at the top of the key and he's handling out of the pick and roll, whereas Jaren Jackson isn't that type of guy where they're calling his name and like using him as a primary ball handler to go through plays. I could see that becoming a somewhat limiting factor if that's kind of how they choose to use Cam Boozer at Duke, as more of a screener, lob finisher, and just doesn't get that ability and chance to shine with the ball in his hands. Because if you look at some of the tape, he can shoot from the perimeter, especially on catch and shoots in the corner. So he's got that in his game, but I'm hoping that he's not one of these victims in college that like they just make him not have the chance to get that off until he gets to the NBA.
Yeah, he's definitely someone who can like. Sometimes when you see like when you watch him play in certain settings, like when you watch him play in like EYBL, he kind of just like he's like the hammer and everybody else is the nail. Like you just throw to him on the block, he scores. It's kind of rinse and repeat. But I think if you see him in like other settings, he shows a little bit more versatility to his game. Like he can pass. He has like a really good feel for the game. He can step out and shoot it. He can take people off the dribble while it's a little bit slow. I wouldn't like say his handle is like otherworldly. He can definitely get to where he's trying to go, especially because his frame doesn't allow you to really bump him off his line.
Yeah. So we talked about Boozer. Now let's get into DeBonsa and Peterson, because I think this is where, I mean, Boozer rightfully so, he's kind of in there, but I think this is kind of where it gets really juicy, because I think a lot of people are swinging towards DeBonsa, Peterson, and then there are a few people who do kind of have Boozer maybe overtaking them. But I think there's also the added interesting aspect of it, because I think they only play once, but they're in the same conference, so we're going to get to see that kind of face off against each other. But I feel like they're going to play, what they're going to be asked to do is kind of different, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the Big 12 is going to be like cinema week in and week out. I mean, you've got BYU with DeBonsa, you've got Kansas, obviously, with Darren Peterson, but then Baylor's got quite a few guys who's going to be doing some big things as well. But I feel like between the two of them, I could see Peterson maybe having a more effective season, because I just think the team, he might have better talent surrounding him. And I think whereas DeBonsa is still ball dominant, I think he's going to be way more at the top of the scouting report. I know BYU has added a few guys and they're definitely improving, but I wouldn't be surprised if in those head-to-head matchups, Peterson has a little bit better performances.
I actually think it might be the opposite, just because like I think while like Kansas like might have like better individual pieces, I think BYU might fit together a little bit more as a team. And I think one of the big things for me to why I think like AJ might end up having a better freshman year is BYU's addition of Rob Wright in the offseason. I think someone to get him the ball, someone to get it to him in his spots, like feed the hot hand when he gets hot. Like Darren is going to be asked to do a lot of Kansas. Like they really don't have necessarily like a true point. He's probably going to have to like just be the creator for their offense. And while they have like other capable players, it's just not a traditional fit around him of like what you would necessarily want. So he's going to be asked to like carry a lot of the load. And I think just because he's so good and there's like no other ball handlers, I think teams are going to have like, especially like when they play teams like Houston and like Baylor, teams that like have really good defensive schemes, I think they can kind of like isolate him and kind of make him look worse than what he really is. But I still expect both of them to have really big years.
Yeah. I think for me, I'm kind of torn, because I feel like I do agree with you, Cameron. I think Kansas is a little bit, they're kind of like overtime elite 2.0 with all the talent that they've got. Not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but it just feels like they don't have the usual Kansas caliber players that you would kind of expect. And I think this is another discussion, but I think ever since the portal, they've just been having a harder time doing that. But that being said, I do think you kind of look at other Kansas teams. I feel like this, and just listening to Bill Self and what he kind of envisions, it sounds like this is going to be the most, what's the right term? I guess NBA style team, just in terms of how they're going to play. And I feel like that alone, and if he does deliver and have, I think he has the potential to have kind of like a Cade Cunningham or Cooper Flagg level season. Not necessarily in terms of team production, but just in terms of individual production. And I think with the style of offense, and if he really does deliver the way that he should, I mean, he has the vision, he has the feel, he has the scoring ability. Like, I think if he does that and he goes out and dominates in the Big 12, I feel like it's just optimal for him to kind of get that number one spot and pull away. Not saying that Bonsa couldn't do that, but I feel like just because of the load that he'll have and the style of offense that he'll play, I feel like scouts might favor more towards him. But again, it's also still early. We haven't really seen what Bonsa's role will look like fully. So that could change.
Do you guys think there's any chance that the first team all Big 12 has more than 3 freshmen on it this year, just due to the insane talent that's in this conference this year with Bonsa and Darren Peterson and some of the others, like even at Houston?
I kind of feel like it'll just be Bonsa and Peterson, honestly. And like, I think the only other freshman who I feel like would really, well, that's not true because I'm forgetting about Arizona. But even then, I still feel like, because just with the type of players that they have, I feel like Bonsa and Peterson, they're going to be at the top of the pool. And with Sanak, I feel like he's at Houston, he's going to be in a situation where like he has offensive tools, but I don't think it's necessarily going to show up in the stat sheet, you know, and I think he's playing alongside so many other vets. I think if anybody, it would probably be one of the Arizona guys just because that's a younger team and they do have some vets, but I feel like they're going to have to supply a lot more. So, but I still feel like it'll just be those two.
Yeah, I think it'll only be like 3 on the first team, like at max. I think like maybe like Tonde might sneak in there. But I think there'll be like on the 2 teams, I do think there'll be like there might be 3 apiece or 2 or 3 apiece for each team. I don't know. It's just hard to say first team just because there's so many veteran players in the Big 12. So it's like those guys are going to get the nod, especially like because some of these freshmen, like while they might go high in the draft, they might not necessarily carry the load on their college team this year. So I would say 3 hot on the high end. I would expect at least 2 though. So somewhere in there.
Yeah, and with that being said, I think we can also kind of segue into some of the other freshmen in this class, unless you guys have more to say about the top 3.
Or do you guys want to tell the people where you have the 3 ranked so far?
Oh, yes, I forgot about that. Does anybody want to go first? I mean, if not, I'll go.
It's going to feel weird saying any of them at like definitively 3rd best in this class, but yeah.
I feel like mine is pretty cookie cutter. I'd say Bonsa, Peterson, and then Boozer. I mean, I feel like that's what I've kind of seen from a lot of people so far, but
yeah, I'm the same way. I actually think that's kind of like against where the consensus is currently. Like, I feel like a lot of people have Darren first, especially with the way like he just ended his high school season. So,
oh, did I say Bonsa first? I meant Peterson.
Yeah,
My bad. Yeah, flip those 2.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. I have Bonsa first in mind, and then I have Peterson and then Boozer, just because to me, like Peterson, I think finished stronger, but I think if you look at like the totality of their high school careers, I think Bonsa might have had the better campaign.
Just for the sake of fun, I'm gonna just go Cam Boozer number 1. We'll go Darren Peterson 2 and AJ Bonsa at 3.
Yeah, I'm excited because I think by the time this uploads, it may have already happened. But as we're recording, BYU has their first scrimmage tomorrow, or what do you call it? Like when they do their inter-team scrimmages.
Yeah, they have like their Midnight Madness, or they just like blue-white scrimmage coming up.
They don't mean much at all, but at this point, it's like it's just all we have to look forward to. So I'm excited for that, and then hopefully, you know, we'll get a little bit better of understanding for Bonsa, but I think we all know he's going to be a dog anyway. So, but yeah, now we can kind of get into some of the other freshmen for this class. I wrote that in the notes that I took for the show. I highlighted a lot of freshmen, but there's even more. Mikkel Brown, Nate Mint, I think those are the two guys who the consensus right now has them kind of in the top 5. And then there's other talents like Caleb Wilson, Tonde Yesufu, Braylon Mullins, Chris Sinak. I just kind of wanted to pick your guys' brain. We can start with Emmett and Brown since they're, I guess, kind of the next highest guys. But who are some guys that you guys are really high on or maybe have some questions on early in this process?
As far as like what they're going to do in college, I'm a little concerned about Emmett just because Rick Barnes' system, and I'm kind of skeptical of how much they're really going to give him the ball. But I think he's such a good shooter, it kind of won't matter. And like I think he has, with his skill set, he has such a high floor because he can shoot the ball so well. It's like he's going to be one and done because teams just aren't going to pass up unless he just can't shoot it. All of a sudden, like teams aren't going to pass up with a guy that tall that can shoot it that well. So he would be, of those next two guys, he's probably the one I'm a little more concerned about. Michael Brown Jr., though, he's come on very, very strong, and I think he's set up for a really big season, I believe.
Yeah, Nate Ament is going to be interesting because when you look at Tennessee over these past few years, they've been known for having elite shooters, whether it's Dalton Connect or Chaz Lanier last year, but those were both guards and wings. So switching this system into now having a guy that's around 6'10" that has the perimeter skills like Nate Ament, I'm interested to see what kind of role he gets to take on as a freshman in that team. There's obviously a lot of change going on within that program, especially in the backcourt. So point guard play, I think, is going to be huge for Nate Ament, and with having someone who can get him the ball where he needs it at the right time. So he's definitely an interesting one. But Tonde Yesufu is someone that everyone always says is like the light version of Anthony Edwards, and he plays very similar and has very similar physicality. But the question is going to be whether it translates at Baylor. And we know that Scott Drew can produce these guards year after year after year. So is Tonde Yesufu going to be the random one to kind of break that streak? I highly doubt it. I think he's going to be really good.
Yeah, he's like kind of the prototype of what you want. Like he's a guy that's like really good defensively. He like completely wrecked the USA's offense at times during the like USA versus World game in Portland, the Nike Hoop Summit game. Sorry, I don't know why that slipped my mind, but he's like he's interesting. I'm interested to see how they use him at Baylor, just because the last few guards they produced have kind of been like a little, probably a notch above him as like a shooter. So I'm interested to see how Scott Drew like adjusts his offense to use somebody who's like more of a driver, get to the rim type of guy.
Yeah, I think for me that is Yesufu is somebody who admittedly I do want to be higher on. And I'm not saying like I'm extremely low on him, but I think just the fit and like kind of the way that he plays, because he has an extremely high motor, and the defense I think will fit right in at Baylor. Like he's kind of screams the Baylor guard if you really think about it. But it's just the offense is, because I remember VJ Edgecombe was talking about how much about Scott Drew doesn't like getting to the mid-range shot, and I think that's kind of a new trend with college coaches and coaches in general anyway. But for Yesufu, it feels like if he's not getting to the paint, that's kind of where he likes to live. And obviously he can expand his game, but I think the offense is kind of going to be the major question mark for him in terms of what it looks like. And if he does kind of live more on a three-point shot diet, is it better than what it was in high school?
Yeah, he's someone who's really interesting. Someone else that is like, I think he's like, he kind of has a little bit of the Cam Boozer effect to me. Like he's been like kind of quiet under the radar, even though he's been one of the highest ranked kids in his class since they started ranking this class. Cole Pete is someone who I'm really interested in. He's a really big frame, kind of 3-4 combo, like maybe even 5, depending on how tall he comes in. He is an athletic freak. His brother was like an offensive lineman in the NFL, I think. So like he has like a history of like his family's like are athletes. Like they all are athletes. So, and you can just kind of tell that in his game. He has struggled to shoot it as of late after his hand injury, but I'm interested to see what that looks like his first year at Arizona.
Yeah, I think I don't want to come in and be but I think of the Arizona freshmen, I feel like I'm kind of higher on Burries than I am Pete. And that's not necessarily a knock on Pete per se, but you kind of touched on it a little bit. It's just the offensive game is kind of especially the shot. I think there's a little bit of a question mark there. And like you said, the defense, the athleticism, the physicality, I think that's not an issue for him. And I think this might just be a bias I have. I'm learning. It's like I think I when I see prospects who primarily just have the defense and the offense isn't fully put together, I just get a little bit more skeptical. And for Tommy Lloyd at Arizona, it's probably going to be different this year because they lost a lot of production from last year, and especially with Caleb Love gone. But I feel like he typically is one of the best offensive coaches or produces one of the best offenses. And I feel like if Braden Burries, I imagine he'll be in that starting lineup. If he's kind of helping shoulder that load and propel them, I could kind of see a route where he maybe goes over Pete, especially if Pete is kind of having to defer. Like, obviously, there's other guys like Krevis, Jaden Bradley will be the point. But if Burries like takes more of an offensive responsibility, and if the shot looks better, I could kind of see a route where he goes over Pete. And I'm not trying to knock Pete, but I feel like there could just be some instances where Burries just takes over, and that kind of skyrockets his value.
Burries can definitely go. Like, he's like someone I'm also really high on in this class. Like, to be honest, like if you look at like the top like 20 players in this class, I'm like, well, I think it like stops for 20. If you look at like ESPN's ranking for me, like I'm kind of high on like everyone, which is like a little concerning because like obviously not everybody can go to the league. But if like this is just a really deep class when you look at it, like I can definitely see what you're saying. Like Burries is like a really good player. He can get downhill. He's like shockingly physical. Like his frame, like it's not like surprising, but in a way, it's like he's so physical for a guard. Like he really creates contact and gets like different angles to the rim. He reminds me of like they're not the same player, but like in a mold, they do like similar things sometimes, like a Dylan Harper a little bit. So he's someone I'm really excited about. But another player that I'm excited about that I think consensus has him a little bit lower than what like his high school rating was. I'm a really big Malik Thomas guy. To me, he's just like a shot maker. It looks strange at times.
So would you take him over A-Cuff? Sorry.
I would take him over A-Cuff just because he's taller. And like he's not only is he taller, like he has longer arms. And I just think it depends kind of if A-Cuff can shoot it, because I think A-Cuff, depending on how good he shoots it this year, I think it's like it could be vastly different. Like he could sneak his way into the lottery, or he could like be a next year guy. But for me, Malik is like such a good shooter, and he's kind of like evolving as a passer as he continues to go along. I think he's someone to watch for like sneaking into the lottery.
Yeah, I think one other freshman to kind of keep your eye on is Caleb Wilson at North Carolina, because he's coming in, another one of these taller 6'8", 6'9" guys with a lot of talent. But we saw last year with Drake Powell at North Carolina, they didn't turn it into that much. He still was a good player and moved on, but like Drake Powell was coming in expected to be a pretty big time contributor, and now they bring in Caleb Wilson, another guy with a similar frame and a lot of hype. And I feel like their coach is going to need to start to show that these guys who want to be one and dones at North Carolina are going to start to be able to do it, because it happened with Elliot Cadeau, and now he is no longer there. Drake Powell still had success, but it wasn't that lottery pick type of stuff that we kind of came in expecting. And now it's Caleb Wilson's turn to try to kind of buck that narrative a little bit and prove that he can stay inside that top 10. The ACC it's a little bit down, I think, this year. There are some teams that are still going to be very good, obviously, with Duke, but I think that top conference is kind of shifting toward the SEC and the Big 12 in 2025-26. But with that being said, North Carolina has a great opportunity with a guy like Caleb Wilson to kind of take those next steps and get back to where they were a few years ago.
Yeah. And I do want to say, for I definitely hear the remarks about Hubert Davis and his struggles to develop talent. And I think that is a fair criticism, don't get me wrong. But I feel like Wilson is also, he's kind of a little bit different than anybody he's ever had, just because I feel like, one, he's a freak athlete, but he can kind of do so many different things. Like, I'm not trying to say he's the best player in this class by any means, but I mean, he has the feel, he can handle the ball a little bit. Like sometimes like watching him, he does kind of give me shades of Evan Mobley a little bit. But I think he kind of has I don't know. I think he has the talent to be okay and still kind of go high, if that makes sense, because he can pass, he has the feel. And people are saying that they might even believe in the jump a little bit. I don't know if I do, but if that hits, I mean, I don't see why he couldn't break.
Yeah, Carolina's definitely like super excited about him. Like they believe in the jumper, at least from like reports that I've read from like Carolina reporters and stuff. Like they believe in the jump shot. He's somebody that's like, I am concerned about the North Carolina factor just because for the last few years it's been where like the top ranked prospects kind of go to lose their draft stock. But
right, I mean, who in the last 10 years is the best North Carolina prospect inside the lottery? Like you kind of have to go back a little bit.
Yeah, it hasn't been the greatest situation for players. However, I do agree with Brandon a little bit. Like he is so adaptable. Like if you just look at the role he played for his high school, where he was like the on-ball guy, dominant, like it was his team guy, and then the role he played in AAU with Cam Boozer in like the Knight Riders, where he was like kind of just like a Jaden McDaniels type role, like where he just guarded and took what was open and took the best assignment on the defensive end, and he played that role perfectly as well. He's someone that's like, to me, he does really show like flashes of being like a good passer. I think there's like a little bit more to his game than what he's been allowed to show at like some of the, like I think if you watch his high school tape and you watch some of like what Carolina's put out earlier, like it feels like they're like sitting on something. Like he's about to have like that he took the next step over the summer and they just haven't let it out yet. So I'm interested to see what the year looks like for him.
And did we talk about, I think somebody brought it up, but I do want to talk about Mikael Brown a little bit, because I think he's kind of the guard outside of he's kind of the guy outside of the top four, I feel like, who, and I don't know how you guys feel, but I feel pretty confident that it goes those three, and then Brown is kind of like the next guy. Ament obviously touched on him. I think it could kind of go either way, but Brown is he's kind of like the ideal 6'3" guard. Like if you're going to be 6'3" in the NBA, I feel like he's kind of the ideal guard that you would want.
And we've already seen last year with Louisville, with Chucky Hepburn going off. I mean, he was a veteran, but similar, smaller guard that can go out there and get buckets and be extremely impactful on the offensive end. If he can do it, I mean, yeah, he could certainly be the next guard off the board.
Yeah, he's like, one, he might not be a smaller guard anymore. Like if you just continue to look at him, like it looks like he's still growing. Like he's already had an insane growth spurt from his junior, senior year to now. Like he's a completely different player with just how much he's grown. And then I think you can kind of see the athleticism kicking in too. Like he's always been like a pretty athletic guard, but at being athletic, generous 6 foot, like probably like 5'10", 5'11" guard is one thing. But being an athletic 6'3", 6'4" guard that can shoot with the range that he has is totally different. Like that is, we're talking like, to me, like a kind of a good comp is like a little bit of Dame in a way. If you see how he plays, like he kind of reminds me of him in certain ways. So he's someone I think if there was somebody that could disrupt that three, I think depending on which team gets the third pick, I think they might have to have a real conversation of what is Cam Boozer's ceiling and what he can realistically be and what Mikael Brown could be. Is there any more freshmen you want to talk about? I think we hit most of the top to the top.
Did we also bring up the Houston?
Not really. We didn't touch Harwell. You kind of hit on Sanak like briefly.
Okay. Yeah, then we could talk about the Houston guys. Yeah, I think I don't remember what their kind of class ranking was, but I'm sure they're up there. Um, one of the top recruiting classes being brought in. They got Chris Sinek, obviously, who's kind of a mobile, fluid big, who kind of remains to be seen like what his full potential is. And then Isaiah Harwell, Kingston Fleming coming in. I think there's some question marks about, where Harwell and Fleming might go, just because I think they're playing alongside a vet heavy system and Kelvin Sampson just kind of being the way that he is. But that's not saying that these guys still couldn't be big time contributors in the first year. It just kind of remains to be seen like what their role kind of looks like. But Sinek, I think, is probably the safest bet to be kind of the one and done of those three.
He definitely has the most talent. Like he can. It's crazy how many guys in this class are like 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", and can all like shoot, dribble, like create for themselves. Like this is a really deep class for wings. Sinak is like a big, but he kind of plays more like a wing when you watch him at certain times. So he's a really skilled guy. I'm interested to see how Kevin Sampson lets him go. Isaiah Harwell is someone who I wasn't like as high on going into like his summer of his senior year, but he definitely impressed at some of those events. And he's someone like I'm keeping an eye out for. And I think he's going to be hard to just keep him off the court. I think he actually might be the safest bet to get drafted, just because I think if Sinak hits, he'll go like really high. But I also see a world where like he's just not physically ready yet, and he just doesn't really see the floor that much.
Yeah, one of the best translatable skills is shooting, and Isaiah Harwell is one of the better shooters among this freshman class. So even if he's not getting 20 plus minutes per game and he's not starting every single game for the Houston Cougars, when he's out there, they're locating him to get shots on the perimeter. And we've seen that it doesn't necessarily turn into one and dones all the time. I think we'll get into it in a little bit with a guy like Isaiah Evans at Duke, who had shown flashes and good stretches of shooting on the perimeter. But even if you come back for another year, you're still seen as one of the better prospects because shooting is always necessary in the NBA, regardless of if you're 18, 19, or 20. Guys will take you if you can shoot the three.
Okay. Well, were there any other freshmen that we wanted to hit on? I think
there is, but like not time like right now.
Yeah,
we got plenty of episodes to get deeper.
That's fine. But yeah, we're just kind of doing an overall review, so kind of doing quick hitters on everybody. But it does make you realize, like, dang, like you just get kind of excited again going into it. But with that being said, then what were you gonna say?
Or nothing. I was just telling Jake while we was on break. I was like, yeah, like there's like kids in the 40s that are like, I think this kid could be a one and done, but it's like,
yeah, that's definitely true. But now I guess we can get into some of the returners for this season who didn't go into the draft last cycle. And there's actually, I was kind of just looking at a list, and there's actually a bunch, I guess, in terms that already have buzz. And then I have my own kind of personal guys who I think could kind of get some more as the season goes on. But we got guys like Yaxel I'm probably going to mess that up, but Lindeberg at Michigan, Bennett Sturts at Iowa, LeBaron Philon too. I feel like people kind of gloss over him sometimes, and Jake already brought up Isaiah Evans, but those are just like some of the mainstream guys. But I guess I'll open it up to you guys. In terms of returners, who are guys that you are most excited to see this next season? And what leaps do you kind of want to see them take now that they're back?
Yeah, there's a lot of talent in college basketball right now. Isaiah Evans, somebody you mentioned, he's someone that I'm really high on. I think he can really shoot the ball. Looks like he's being a lot more patient with his game now. Like he's just not rushing it to the shot because I think he just knows that he's gonna play. Like I think last year you could see him pressing at times because he felt like if he didn't contribute, he might get hooked. This year with just the increased role, he looks a lot more comfortable. Guys like him, Taha Pettiford is a guy I'm really big on. He's a small guard, so it's gonna be rough, but I'm really excited to see what he does. JoJo Tugler at Houston, Carter Knox, Billy Richmond, Jaden Quaidens at Kentucky. Like there's a lot of really good returners.
Yeah, I'm looking at Todd Pettiford probably the most, not necessarily as the guy that I think will get the highest draft position, but I think in this year, if he gets more of a workload at Auburn, obviously Bruce Pearl retiring right before the season, so we'll see the ramifications of that for the Tigers. But Todd Pettiford had slightly less of a workload than some people were expecting as a freshman. And like you said, Cam, he's a little bit undersized, but I think if he can put together a full SEC season as pretty much that lead guard for Auburn and look like he can handle himself against some of that tough competition in the SEC, I think some of the worries about him being undersized, they're not going to completely go away, but I think some teams will start to feel less about him being undersized and just see him as a really talented player.
Yes. Someone else in that vein of just like undersized guard, I thought Christian Anderson at Texas Tech had a really good like feverish summer. Like he had a really good summer. And I'm interested to see how that just translates to college basketball. And if he can play like he played over there, as a smaller guard, he might not. It's going to be hard for smaller guards. Just if we've seen the trend in the last few drafts, like smaller guards just don't go high. But I think he's someone who can maybe crack the back half of the first round, or maybe the top of the second.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him and Toppin over there at Texas Tech. Toppin was named Big 12 Player of the Year, and like you said, I just want to see those two together. But Toppin, I'm kind of more excited for just because the defense, obviously the interior scoring, but I'm like, there hasn't really been any indicators in the past of like him having the touch to be a shooter. But if he does kind of come out there and improve, and I think the defense has been good, but there are times where it feels like he could be more consistent on that end of the floor, despite the production that he's giving. But Toppin is another guy who I'm looking at, and like you kind of look at his journey, I still think he has a lot of room to grow because he was at New Mexico, then last year Texas Tech, and now he's going to have another year with that team and that program. I still think he could make himself a very draftable player, especially as a big man. And with some of the capabilities he has, I do think that there's a way for him.
Yeah, some other guys I'm excited. Or go ahead.
Go ahead.
Or I was just going to mention a couple other guys here from Florida I'm excited for. Thomas Ha and Boogie Fland are two guys out. Eager to see what they look like playing for Florida. Thomas Ha was already there. I'm not as high on him as everyone else is, but I think like everybody is projecting like a jump from him, just like with an expanded role. I'm interested to see what that looks like because I can see something there. I just want to see it materialize a little more. As far as Flan goes, he's someone that I think can go, and I think if he can stay healthy, I think he's someone that also could like threaten to sneak in the back half of that first round.
Yeah, Flan, he definitely had some question marks, I guess, before he had the injury last season, particularly with his finishing. But I'd argue like if he stayed healthy before that run, and I guess this isn't really a hot take, but if he kind of stayed on that trajectory, I think he could have cracked the first round last year. Even though it was kind of loaded with guards, but him at Florida, I think obviously he has some big shoes to fill with the absence of Walter Clayton and the championship aspirations that they had. But I think if he's playing alongside Xavier Lee and who's another good playmaker in his own right, I think, and if he anchors that backcourt, like I think he could do some really good things for his stock, quite honestly.
Another guy that we haven't, I don't think, mentioned yet for this segment is LeBaron Philon, who's back in college basketball at Alabama. Another one of these guys, kind of like you guys are talking about, Boogie Fland. He had first round buzz for a lot of the year and then decided to come back, and he's back with the Crimson Tide. So do you think he could maintain that first round projection, or do you think he's going to slide a little bit with all these new freshmen?
Think about how deep this class is, he's going to need to shoot it. Like, he didn't shoot it that great his first year. I think if he takes a step forward as a shooter, he could threaten to be like a borderline top 10 pick. I think if he doesn't shoot it, he's going to have to be like really, really productive in order to still get drafted this year. He's kind of like one of those swing guys to where like I could see maybe possibly a third year depending on how he develops, or I could see him being like really high. So he's someone that I'm excited for, and I really want to see how he's developed over the summer.
Yeah, I think for him, Cameron kind of got it all, but I think if he doesn't shoot the ball well, it's like I think there could still be a route just because I think he'll have kind of a bigger role than he did last year, and if he's maybe more of, I guess, I don't want to say leader, but like if he's shouldering more of a load, even if the shooting isn't great, I could maybe still see a way just because of everything else that he does so well. But yeah, I think I don't want to repeat everything that Cameron just said, but I think there is a way even without the shooting. And then who else? Oh, I did want to ask this question though, because Bennett Sturtz is somebody who I think after last year's run, it seemed like people were even making the case he could have gone last year. And I think that is a fair assessment. Like he didn't even test the pre-draft process at all. But I see somebody like, would you rather take him or a guy like Tahad Pettiford? Because to me, I feel like I'm seeing a lot of people who are projecting Sturtz to go higher than Pettiford, or like they have him on a tier above. But I'm also just like, one, Sturtz, when you're a guard in the NBA, I think you have kind of a lot less of a leash to work with, and he's kind of an older guard. And Pettiford, I think, like Sturtz, don't get me wrong, he's a great playmaker, but I feel like in terms of a spark plug, Pettiford has already kind of done the role that he'll do in the NBA, if that makes sense. It's just more of now this year he has a bigger role, so let's see what that. I'll stop talking and open it up to you guys, but I just wanted to get your thoughts because I feel like that's something I've seen quite a bit of.
Yeah, I would say Sturtz is someone I need to do a little more work in. Like I need to like dig into a little bit more just to he's someone that's like I've seen him play and I'm not as high as everybody else is on him, but I want to like double check a little bit, like to make sure I'm not missing anything. He's someone that like as far as him versus Tahad or like other guards similar, it kind of to me it just like depends on what team you are. Like when you get to that point in the draft, like I don't have Sturtz where a lot of people have him. Like I've seen him as high as like borderline top 10 to like lottery. Like I've seen him ranked really really high. I don't have him there. His size does give him an advantage, but I think his age kind of like evens it out between the two. I think it would be really like team and fit dependent. Like, do we need a Todd Pettiford or do we need a Bennett Sturtz?
Yeah, I feel like some of the concerns will be how does he manage the Big Ten level of physicality? And I think it's only going to take maybe the first couple of weeks of going into conference play, or if they play some big non-conference games against Power 5 schools, to really see if he can handle it or if he was just elite at the Drake level. So if he shows that he can still be at least similar or just as good, because we've seen this with a guy like Dalton Connect, totally different players, but coming from mid-major, and then he jumps to Tennessee, and he's actually better at Tennessee somehow than he was at the lower level. So if Bennett Sturtz can make a similar jump like that and be one of the best guards in the Big Ten, you know, it's going to be hard to kind of knock him for, you know, other reasons.
All right. Are there any other major returners we're missing? I think
major.
I don't think we talked about Lindenberg.
We could do Michigan guys real quick because I like Ademar.
Okay. Do you want to lead us off then?
Yeah. So some other guys I like here, Yaxel Lindenberg and Ademar from Michigan. They're like they made a lot of noise this summer with how much they got paid to transfer to Michigan. I'm interested to see how the production translate. I'm a really good, like really big Yaxel fan. Like I think just how versatile he is and how insane the production got at certain times last year. Like I think at the very least he's a productive NBA player. Mara is someone who has struggled so far. Like at UCLA, he didn't really ever really find his footing. I just think he's so talented, or was so talented when he came to UCLA. I find it hard to believe that like none of that is there. So I'm interested to see what Dusty May can bring out of here at Michigan.
Yeah, I think Mara, I definitely think he could have a kind of resurrection, especially because you kind of look at the storylines going into last year with Michigan and the bigs they had last year, Golden and Wolf. They kind of the narrative was kind of like, oh, I don't think this is gonna work. Mara's kind of a different player than those two, but I could still kind of see where he takes another leap, and just having that change of scenery. But I think Yaxel, yeah, he's the guy who I feel like of all the returners, and again, there's kind of the shooting question with him, but he kind of does everything, and I think we saw that insane game last year. I'm forgetting the stat line, but it was in the conference tournament. Like, I think he's a safe bet to be the one guy who like he's gonna come out and produce, fill the stat sheet. Maybe not to the same level, but he's gonna be productive.
He's gonna look like an NBA player playing at the college level. I feel like Michigan, they're gonna be one of the better rosters in the Big Ten, and he's gonna be out there on the wing as a vet that knows what's going on. He's gonna know he's not gonna make those dumb mistakes that some of the freshmen are gonna make at a similar position that he plays. So he's probably gonna be sitting around just under 20 points a game and look really, really impressive.
Okay. If that's all that we want to hit on, we're at 52 minutes, so I think we're doing good.
Yeah.
But yeah, this episode was just kind of it wasn't anything too deep. We just kind of wanted to run through, the big three and then everybody else in the draft class. We'll kind of do deeper stuff as the season goes on. And me and Jake were talking beforehand, but we definitely want to try and get some interviews on this as well, because I feel like we've been doing this for long enough now where I feel like if we really want to grow, that's kind of the way to do it. Also, too, I think it's just nice to get other perspectives too, especially from people who are kind of following draft and draft needs and stuff like that a little bit more closely. But yeah, thank you guys for listening to League Bound. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.